There's a moment every man knows but rarely talks about. The moment she stops replying. The phone stays quiet. The conversation dies. And you're left staring at the silence, wondering what changed. It feels like rejection without a word, like being erased piece by piece. And it hits harder than anger because at least anger means she still cares enough to fight. Most men panic here. They reach out again. They argue with themselves. They think the only way to fix the distance is to close it. But the harder you chase, the faster she runs. Here's the hard truth. Ignoring you is not just about you. It's about power. It's about testing your emotional control, your ability to keep a masculine frame when she pulls away. This is where emotional discipline matters most. So when a woman ignores you, what should you actually do? Will you break in the silence, or will you let the silence shape you into something stronger? Point number 1, the sting of being unseen. The sting of being unseen is not loud. It does not shout. It lingers in the silence of a phone that doesn't light up, in the half-second pause when her eyes slide past you at dinner. This is the kind of wound men rarely admit, because it isn't betrayal you can prove. It isn't lust you can resist. It isn't divorce papers you can hold in your hand. It's emptiness, and emptiness is harder to fight. You begin asking questions in your own head. Did I lose my edge? Did she find someone else? Or am I simply invisible now? That is the sting of being unseen. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Read that again. You don't own her silence. You only own the frame you stand in when she gives it to you. The ancients understood this in the arena. When the crowd turned against a gladiator, when cheers became silence, a weak man panicked. He rushed, he bled, he fell. The strong man held posture. He fought with clarity, not emotion. That silence became his weapon. Today, the arena has changed. It isn't stone walls and steel blades. It's unread texts. It's cold shoulders in the bedroom. It's a woman using absence to tilt relationship power dynamics and measure your emotional discipline. Female psychology is sharper than most men realize. Sometimes her silence is not rejection. It's a test. She wants to see if you'll chase, if you'll bargain away your value as a man just to be noticed. Stoic detachment is not about indifference. It is about control, masculine control. It is choosing to let the sting remind you that your worth is not handed out by another person's attention. When you feel unseen, you must become heavier, not lighter, more grounded, not desperate. The answer is never more words. The answer is presence without pleading. Train your silence, and then ask yourself, when she withdraws her gaze, do you collapse into shadows, or do you stand so firmly that even the silence bends around you? Beneath this truth lies something harsher still. What happens when being unseen is not just her test, but the world's permanent reality for men who refuse to rise. Point number 2. Why silence provokes desperation. Why does her silence cut deeper than her words? Because words give you something to fight. Silence leaves you in a war with yourself. That's why it provokes desperation. It exposes the one enemy you cannot out-argue, out-text, or out-negotiate: your own mind. You feel it when the phone stays still. Your chest gets tight. Your thoughts spin like a broken wheel. You replay every last detail of the last conversation. Was it something you said? Something you missed? You start clawing at the quiet like a man drowning in air. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." That is the trap. It isn't her silence that breaks you. It's the endless stories you invent inside it. In ancient courts, silence was a weapon. Accusers would wait, saying nothing, letting the accused unravel under pressure. Men condemned themselves not by proof but by their own frantic words. The same thing happened today. Modern female psychology knows this. Silence pulls at your craving for control. It tempts you to chase, to plead, to prove. And in that moment, the relationship power dynamics shift. You stop being the man with value. You become the man who is begging to be seen. Desperation is not about love. It's about the fear of losing your identity when you're ignored. That's why silence feels like death to the male ego. The cure is emotional discipline. To recognize the panic for what it is, a test of masculine control. To see that your value as a man does not shrink because someone withdraws attention. Hold your ground. Never rush to fill her silence. Control your frame, and then ask yourself, when the quiet arrives, do you let it hollow you out, or do you let it sharpen you into someone unshakable? Because the silence you fear most is not hers. It's the silence of your own wasted potential. And if you cannot command yourself there, you will lose everywhere else. Point number 3. Female psychology behind withdrawal. Withdrawal is not random. It is not a mystery. It is a move with purpose. And if you fail to understand it, you will always chase shadows. A woman pulling back often looks like rejection on the surface. But beneath it lies calculation, instinct, and sometimes defense. Female psychology uses silence the way a fencer uses distance. Measuring, probing, seeing how you react when the blade is not yet drawn. Sometimes she withdraws to test your emotional control. Will you keep your masculine frame or will you collapse into panic? Sometimes she withdraws because attention has made her too certain, and she wants to feel desire again through absence. And sometimes, the withdrawal is survival, her way of retreating when she feels the bond is tilting into weakness or control. Epictetus said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react that matters." This is the fulcrum of withdrawal. Her silence is only half the story. Your response writes the other half. In ancient households, Roman wives often stepped back to rebalance the bond, forcing men to reassert leadership with composure, not pleading. Today, withdrawal happens in digital spaces. Unread texts, a shift in tone, fewer nights together. The tools change, the psychology does not. Modern dating is built on push and pull. Social media feeds her with constant validation, so her silence toward you can feel amplified, almost weaponized. But beneath it, the question is always the same. Will you break discipline, or will you anchor yourself? Stoic detachment is the answer. Not to ignore her, not to retaliate, but to refuse to let female rejection define your value as a man. Relationship power dynamics always tilt toward the one least dependent on approval. Your task is simple but never easy. Hold frame, hold ground, hold silence. Command yourself. Now ask, when she withdraws, are you the man who chases, or the man who makes her absence notice your presence even more? Because the harsh truth is this: her silence is not about distance. It is about measurement, and only men who endure it without breaking ever pass that measure. Point number 4. The trap of chasing validation. The trap of chasing validation is one of the oldest prisons for men. It looks harmless at first. A text here, a compliment there, a small need for recognition. But step by step, it turns you into a beggar of approval. And the moment you beg, you hand away your power. Every man has felt it. You send the second message because the first was left unread. You rehearse the perfect words, hoping to pull her attention back. You start bending yourself into shapes you barely recognize, just to be noticed again. That is not love. That is not a connection. That is an addiction. Marcus Aurelius warned, you become what you give your attention to. If all your focus goes into chasing her gaze, you stop being the man she once saw. You shrink into a shadow of yourself. In the ancient world, validation came from the crowd. Gladiators thrived when cheered. But the strongest fought the same whether the stands were silent or roaring. That was their discipline, and it is yours today. Female psychology is not blind to this. When you chase, she feels it. When you prove, she sees it. It confirms the shift in relationship power dynamics. She becomes the prize, you become the pursuer. Modern dating makes this trap worse. Social media trains men to measure their value by likes, replies, and fleeting attention. The result is a generation of men addicted to the smallest crumbs of validation, never realizing how fast it drains their masculine frame. Chasing validation is not about her. It's about your refusal to sit with silence. It's about your fear of being unseen. And that fear costs more than rejection ever could. Emotional discipline demands you stop reaching, stop begging, stop proving. Never negotiate your value. So ask yourself, are you living as the man she first respected, or as the echo who survives only when she approves? Because here is the brutal truth. A man who chases validation loses it. Every time. Point number 5. Holding the frame through emotional discipline. Holding a frame is not about pretending you don't feel. It's about refusing to be ruled by what you feel. That's the heart of emotional discipline. Every man knows the pull. She withdraws and your chest burns with the urge to react, to question, to demand, to prove. It feels almost impossible to stand still. But the frame you hold is not for her. It is for you. It is the invisible boundary between who you are and who desperation tries to make you. Epictetus wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That is the standard. Master yourself and no silence can own you. In the old world, a Roman commander did not chase every insult. He stood composed, measured, controlled. His men followed because his discipline created order. The same law applies in relationships today. Female psychology respects what does not bend. It tests not to break you, but to see if you will break yourself. This is where Stoic detachment becomes more than philosophy. It is a weapon. A shield against hot-cold games, emotional traps, and the lure of validation. If you lose composure, you lose frame. If you lose frame, you lose value as a man. Modern dating thrives on reaction. Every unread message is bait. Every shift in tone is a hook. Every withdrawal is a test of whether your emotional control is stronger than her silence. Holding frame through emotional discipline is not silence for silence's sake. It is standing tall when every part of you wants to fold. It is proving to yourself that your worth is not negotiable. Train yourself to pause, to breathe, to let the moment pass before you respond. This is the training of command. Never confuse stillness with weakness. It is stillness that builds the kind of man she cannot move at will. Hold frame. Now ask. When she pushes you into the storm, do you fight the waves? Or do you anchor so deep the sea itself cannot drag you? Because here is the truth few face: if you cannot hold your frame in silence, you will lose it in every battle louder than this one. Point number 6. Turning absence into strength. Absence feels like loss at first. Like something has been stolen from you. The call doesn't come. The bed is half empty. The silence stretches long enough to feel like failure. But absence is not only loss, it is space. And space can be turned into strength. Most men waste this space. They fill it with begging, with chasing, with restless energy that drains them further. They try to patch the void with her attention, instead of learning to stand inside it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful than your own soul." That is the truth hidden inside absence. The silence you fear is the same silence that can train you to master yourself. In ancient times, warriors endured exile, campaigns away from family, years of separation. Absence forged them harder, colder, sharper. They returned with weight in their presence because they did not rot in longing. They grew in the void. Modern men face the same test, only quieter. Unread messages, nights without warmth, empty apartments after custody battles, rent notices taped to the door. These absences can hollow you out, or they can harden you into someone unshakable. Female psychology often uses withdrawal as leverage, but here lies the paradox. If you turn her absence into self-mastery, the power flips. She expects you to crumble. Instead, you become heavier, more composed, more disciplined. Her silence becomes the fire you forge in. This is Stoic detachment in action. You stop treating absence as punishment. You treat it as a gym, a place to train presence, strength, and clarity. Do not chase the missing piece. Build so powerfully that the absence is no longer a wound. It becomes the very reason you sharpen into steel. Turn absence into strength. Now ask yourself, when life removes what you crave, do you collapse into emptiness? Or do you rise so that emptiness itself begins to carry your weight? Because here is the reality. Absence will visit every man. Those who resist it decay. Those who embrace it ascend. Point number 7. Detachment as a weapon, not escape. Detachment is one of the most misunderstood words in a man's vocabulary. Most hear it and think it means not caring, walking away, cutting ties. They confuse it with escape. But real detachment is not a weakness. It is not avoidance. It is a weapon. It sharpens your control, steadies your emotions, and forces the world to adjust to your stillness. When she withdraws, when she ignores, when she plays hot and cold, your first instinct is to chase. That is the natural pull of desire and rejection. But the detachment says, I will not chase. I will not collapse. I will not let your silence dictate my value as a man. Epictetus taught, no man is disturbed by things but by the view he takes of them. That is the edge. Detachment doesn't erase feeling. It cuts the chain between feeling and weakness. The ancients wielded it in war and politics. A general could not afford panic when allies betrayed him. A senator could not beg when the crowd turned hostile. Detachment gave them command when others broke. Today the battleground is smaller but just as brutal. Unread texts, a turned back in bed, silent treatments that push men into begging, relationship power dynamics that flip because one person refuses to hold frame. Female psychology is keenly aware of this. Silence is often a measure. Will you unravel or will you endure? Detachment becomes the weapon that flips the test. You respond with calm, not collapse, with grounded presence not needed. This is not an escape. It is mastery. It is refusing to be dragged into a game that strips away your dignity. It is turning every silence into proof of your composure. Wield detachment with discipline. Now ask yourself, when silence strikes, are you running from it? Or are you standing in it with a weapon no one can take from you? Because here's the harsh truth. Escape leaves you weaker, but detachment leaves you untouchable, and untouchable men cannot be moved. Point number 8. Reclaiming value in the quiet. Quiet can feel like a graveyard. No texts, no calls, no signs that you matter. For many men, that silence becomes proof of worthlessness. But the truth is different. Silence does not erase your value. It only exposes whether your value depends on someone else's recognition. That is where men collapse. They believe being unseen means being nothing. So they chase, they beg, they trade away their dignity just to hear a single word again. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are desperate, your soul weakens. If your thoughts are disciplined, your soul hardens. In ancient exile, warriors and philosophers spent years in isolation. Cut off from recognition, they built presence from within. When they returned, they carried weight that no applause could give. Modern men face quieter exiles. Divorce papers on the counter, an empty apartment after work, the cold silence of a partner who no longer looks up. These moments feel like death because your worth seems invisible. But invisibility is not erasure. It is an invitation. Female psychology often uses withdrawal to test if your value collapses without validation. If you crumble, you confirm the test. If you hold, you reclaim the ground she cannot take. Reclaiming value in the quiet means this: building strength when no one is watching. Discipline in the gym when the phone is still. Focus on your craft when the bed is empty. Clarity in thought when every urge says to beg. The quiet will not hand you validation. It will hand you a mirror, and the man you see there will tell you if you've lost yourself or found yourself. Never let silence decide your value. Now ask yourself in the quiet, are you waiting to be chosen, or are you forging into the kind of man who does the choosing? Because here's the final truth. Silence does not lower your worth. It reveals whether you ever believed you had any. Silence has been the thread from the start. Her silence, the world's silence, your own silence. It is the one test no man can escape. But the real question is simple. When silence comes, do you let it strip you or do you let it forge you? Do you crumble unseen or do you stand heavier than before? Every moment of withdrawal, every quiet room, every ignored message is an arena. The weak fill it with noise. The strong build presence in it. If this struck you, subscribe to Stoic Truth. Like the lesson, share it with men who need it, and prepare yourself. The next truth cuts even deeper.